Welcome back to Zestology, new rules for living with energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton. Normally I record the podcast intros for Zestology in the park, but today I'm walking the back streets of London. So it might sound a little bit echoey, but similar environment, but just down the road from the park that I normally am, and not quite as green and leafy. Now today on Zestology, your favourite law of attraction expert is back. As seen on Oprah, as heard on Zestology multiple times, Jeannette Maw is more fun and attracting more good vibes than ever before. And after something small and unexpected and weird happened to her, it happened that she experienced big consequences and positive changes. In this podcast, we will explore, with the woman who describes herself as a full-time manifesting geek, we'll explore three things. Number one, choosing to feel good. Number two, finding a way to feel better. And number three, expanding consciousness, which quite clearly is the biggie. Okay, so choosing to feel good, finding a way to feel better, and expanding consciousness. I feel if we can do those things in, one podcast, we're doing pretty well. So I hope you enjoy this podcast with our favourite law of attraction expert, Jeannette Maw. But first, that small, unexpected, weird thing that happened to her out of the blue. What was it?
My internet provider just went kaput. I now know what happened. At the time, it was a big mystery. But I had no internet, I had no TV, I don't use a cell phone the way most people use a cell phone, so I didn't have email, social media. I mean, I was really unplugged in a way that I have never been. Even on vacation, I would still check emails at night just to make sure things were under control and I didn't have this big pile waiting for me when I got home. So this was a really brand new experience that lasted almost 2 weeks. And it was exceptionally insightful, especially once I decided to embrace it rather than try to resolve it. And that's actually how I think it resolved once I stopped fighting it. But yeah, I got a lot of interesting insights about myself and my rhythm and my pace and my focus. And I'm a person who considered herself pretty well balanced when it came to the inputs that I get in the world. Like I said, I'm not addicted to a cell phone. I hardly even use it. I maybe check it a couple times a week to see if a neighbor's texted me about anything. But, and I'm not addicted to social media. So I really thought I had a good handle on things. But boy, when I went without anything, it made me realize just how invasive technology was in my world. And I know how it is with the average person, even more so than that. And what exactly that was costing me.
And obviously you are a law of attraction expert. And I have to say, some of the podcasts that you've come on, Zestology, in the past have been some of the most popular podcasts that I've ever done. And we've had so much fun doing them as well. It's been brilliant. Is there a sense that with the law of attraction and technology, I find often what happens with technology is it brings some incredible things into my life, but as a bit of a kind of lowest common denominator, I carry on scrolling even when I'm bored of what's going on the feed, for example. And when that happens, is there a law of attraction element? I'm bringing kind of boredom into my life or something. I haven't quite thought that through, but what did you find when you kind of unplugged?
I got to say, I loved the term I heard you use. I don't know if you made this up yourself, but the weapons of mass distraction. Oh, no,
I don't think I did. I can't claim credit for that one, unfortunately, but I might nick it and say that it was me.
You were where I heard it from, and I thought that was so relevant because, look, conscious creation is all about harnessing our focus, our thoughts to create our reality deliberately, on purpose, in a way that we prefer. And when we are addicted to the inputs, then someone else is really in charge of our thoughts, whether it's advertisers, whether it's fake accounts on social media. I mean, when we are that kind of engaged in something, we're exceptionally passive, and it doesn't often lead us in the direction that helps us manifest what we want in life. So it can be an incredible challenge to someone who is intending to be in the practice of consciously creating their world if they're addicted to technology. And that can be, I know a lot of people experience this when they temporarily are without their phone for even a day. They either forget it or it breaks, or whatever might happen, that a Facebook account gets suspended. You'd think some people, their world ended. I know that it can be something that's easy to ignore and yet has a dramatic impact on how we're paying attention in the world, and certainly how we feel about it. I noticed one of the things that happened with me is that my life got a lot more peaceful, and I have been very deliberate about curating a very positive feed in my technology, I thought, and yet without it, life was even better. I mean, my vibration definitely went up a couple of notches.
What do you mean by your vibration? Because I know this is a key part of, obviously, of law of attraction, but also I think of this podcast is all about energy, and vibrations and energy seem to me to be one and the same.
Yeah, so vibration is one of those terms in conscious creation world that we throw about a lot, but what it basically means is how we're feeling, because whatever we're creating in the world is based on how we feel, or actually a better way to say it is how we feel is an indication of how we're focused. So if we're feeling bored, that's an indication we're focused on something that isn't very exciting. If we're feeling anxious, it's an indication we're focused on something that makes us feel stressed. If we're feeling fabulous, that's an indication our thoughts are dialed on something positive and uplifting. So our vibration, our energy, it's our frequency that we're vibrating. It's what our energy is. And it's a reflection of how we're focused, what we're thinking, what we're paying attention to, what we're observing, what thoughts we're conjuring. And that's where our entire world comes from. That's how we create our reality. So it's an exceptionally essential element to the good life, to living what we want.
Did you, I often think two themes that come up again and again are nature and community, and I think both of those things can get kind of sucked down the drain when we start spending too much time on Facebook, and on not just Facebook. It's a bit unfair on Facebook really, but just technology in general, whether it's Netflix or whatever it is, or just spending too much time working and doing emails. Did you feel like you reconnected a little bit with nature and with your community as well?
Well, Tony, it's amazing because I thought I was already well plugged in to nature. It's one of my core values. It's one of the reasons I moved where I moved to. I'm surrounded by it. It's who I am. It's so important to me. And yet, when I was without any digital inputs whatsoever, I realized I'd been glossing over it. I hadn't been paying attention the way it deserved for me to pay attention to, and how beneficial it was for me to pay attention. Even like sunsets became an event in my household. It was, I mean, they'd been happening every day, and I thought I was paying attention, but once there was nothing else but the world around me, it became a whole different experience. It showed me that I wasn't nearly as in touch with what mattered to me as I thought I was. And the same with community, which, for the first 3 or 4 days, I just totally went without. But eventually I was like, I seriously need to get some email. So I rolled up to the local cafe for their free Wi-Fi and I would just be there for like an hour and a half. That was my intention, to just get caught up and see what was happening, because I had major things happening in my business that week. It was like the worst time ever. I was having a website makeover. I was debuting a new site and launching a new course. To be offline at that time was incredibly bad timing, I thought. And then while I was at the cafe, I'm smiling from ear to ear because I don't think I can properly describe what happened to me when I talked with local people.
Right, yeah.
I've only been up in this area for about 2 years, and it was just exceptional to experience people and how delightful they are. And I talk with people all day long. That's what great. I do for a living, on the phone, but to do it face to face in person with people that I live next door to. I experienced community in a way that I haven't in years. I could probably even say decades. Yeah, it was insane. What I realized, it's been costing me to be as digitally plugged in as I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I had a problem, Tony. I thought I was better than the average person. I think I probably was, and still.
Well, I think that demonstrates the addictive nature of it all as well. Because obviously you and I were kind of talking about this off podcast, because you know that I've put together this program, don't you, with a friend of mine, and it's about unplugging. It's called iwanttounplug.com. And you know, the whole reason that I've done this is because that nobody's perfect. I know that I'm not perfect about that, and I know that I sometimes succumb to the lure of a Game of Thrones binge watch, you know, but I don't know that I feel any better after it. And I think that's the really hard thing. It's quite hard. It's quite hard to remind oneself, even when you have 2 weeks off. You come back to the technology and it's quite hard to remind yourself, no, actually, life is better without. And that's why I wanted to kind of use the NLP skills to put a program together just to help people with a bit more resilience.
You know, that's what I said to myself. It was taking so long for my internet to be restored that I thought, there's a lesson for me here. Someone's trying to tell me something. And I thought it's that, look, the benefits that I'm experiencing, I'm meant to commit to, so that even when I'm restored to the rest of the world, I maintain these new habits that are serving me so well, like watching sunsets and talking to people in person. And yet, as soon as I had email again, I felt like, well, I got a lot of catch up to do. And it's almost like if I keep this routine up, I'm even going to forget what I got from this. So I know the seductive nature of it and how challenging it can be to find that balance that serves us best. And I'm telling you, I would not have done this if it had not been forced on me. This is not something that I would have chosen because, again, I didn't think I had an issue. So to experience that I was being detrimentally affected by where my attention was going, that was a real eye-opener for me. So I think you're right. We do need some sort of support for getting a handle on this, because just I don't think it's going to happen really naturally. The way the system is set up.
I think there is a movement. People are starting to realise. It's still in its very early stages, but they are starting to realise that kind of overstimulated, over-adrenalised kind of dependence on technology isn't always a good thing. And it's like it's so plain to see as well. I mean, you mentioned conscious creation before we went camping in this kind of, I guess you'd call it a nature reserve last week. We were there for 5 nights. And firstly, the sense of community, because it was like a shared kitchen. Everyone's talking to each other when you're cooking, and it's, you want a bit of my olive oil? Yeah, help yourself. It's all very, very friendly. And then you have to kind of learn to live without technology a little bit, because we did have some 3G, even though we didn't have any Wi-Fi. But one of the things is that this place is a particular sanctuary for a particular type of butterfly called the purple emperor butterfly. And there's more purple emperor butterflies here than anywhere else in the... I don't know about the world, but certainly in the country. We tried to find them ourselves, couldn't at all. But then you'd see, every once in a while, you'd see someone with a stick looking up into a tree. You think, he knows like he looks what he's talking about. And ask him, and he'd point you out some purple emperor butterflies. And the reason for doing without technology is, if you think you can Instagram story a purple emperor butterfly, you can't. It just looks rubbish, and they're not going to be able to get close enough, and it just doesn't look very good. So again, it forces you to live in the moment, appreciate the butterfly, because it's very transient, and they're not really that keen on posing for Instagram stories. Butterflies, they're off before you've got close to them. So it's definitely a learning experience for me in terms of unplugging, just being in that kind of nature surrounding.
I recently finished a book. I've finished a lot of books while I had nothing else to do. Yeah. Including Lost Connections by Johann. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Hari.
Yeah. Johann Hari. Yeah.
Oh, you know this,
he's
right?
British, right? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So that explains why Elton John is on his cover. Anyway, he was talking about how one of the ways to resolve the experience of depression is to restore our connections to the natural world and to each other. And I think that we don't really understand how that's missing from our world until we experience it again. I certainly didn't.
And then did you find, in terms of, so conscious creation, is that another phrase for law of attraction?
Yes, for manifesting. What we would say that law of attraction is why conscious creation is a thing. Law of attraction is it's how our universe is set up, that what we focus on is what we get, that our attention is what's creating the world around us. But conscious creation is using it on purpose. It's using it to our benefit, because most people are creating by default. It's unconscious creation. They're focused on what is and creating more of it, and not even realizing that they have the ability to create something different if they just change their mind. If we change our thoughts, change our focus, it changes everything. But that's easier said than done, it turns out, because reality is so seductive. So if whatever we're paying attention to, that's what's coming, which is why I realized, as I was paying attention to all these things that I didn't want in my world, I had, it's crazy how it started. I volunteer as a foster mom for rescued animals, and I had a litter of kittens, and I also had a litter of puppies. And the kittens were getting old enough to get adopted, and I was anticipating the feeling of loss when they were not in my house anymore. And that's a good thing. That's how it's supposed to work. But it still makes me sad when they're gone, even though they've gone to their forever homes. I'm anticipating loss, and that's something I usually feel so deeply. It's not unusual for me to cry for on and off for a day or two. That's just the routine. I'm used to it. I do it. It's how it goes. But that as I was focused on that, then loss started showing up in other ways, in some really unwanted ways. But it makes sense, because here I am, I'm dialed on loss, and then more loss happens, and then more loss happens, and the more it happened, the more I was like, oh my gosh, no, not this. And because that's what I'm paying attention to, that's what I get more of. And it just kept getting worse in ways that I won't even describe, because I refuse to talk about it anymore, because that way of focusing is not what I want more of. So that whole resistance and that don't want was what inspired me to start saying yes to things. Find something to feel better about. Find something to celebrate, something that's going right in your world. And that's why when my internet went out, I refused to continue to talk about what I was losing, because I did not want that to continue anymore. So as I shifted my focus towards what I no longer had, and instead focusing on, okay, what does this allow me? How can I say yes to this? How is this a good thing? It became one of the best experiences of my year. And I mean, I really felt like it was a game changer for me. This is what's going to shift the rhythm and the pace of not just the way I work, but my life in general, and certainly my connections with other people, because I've committed to getting to that cafe more than I ever did before.
That's great.
Just as a way of, being with people.
So the conscious creation stuff, if we were to, because I used to write a lot of stuff down. I don't know that I write so much down now. But certainly when I started to kind of learn NLP, they used to say, you've got to be careful about the language you use, because if you say to somebody, don't think of a blue elephant, they're going to think of a blue elephant.
We all just did.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of consciously creating something now, I'm sure everyone listening to this has got things that they'd like in their life, some big, some small. How do we consciously create it in a positive way and not slip into those traps around thinking around the negative stuff like you did with loss?
Right. Well, it's really easy for us to be paying attention to what we don't have, because we want it, we don't have it. And if we've tried the traditional way, like through action, to try to make it happen, and it still hasn't, it can be very frustrating, and we can start to lose hope in it and feel discouraged. And when we're dialed on discouragement and despair and not getting what we want, that is not a vibrational instruction that is fun to have returned to us, because whatever we're dialed on, that's what's coming back. So finding a way to, and there are a variety of ways to do it, but finding some way instead to focus on what we want instead of what we don't want. That's why appreciation is such a common teaching in the self-help, in the personal development world, because to turn our attention towards what we want, what we appreciate, what's going right, that's a powerful instruction. For that one to get returned to us, that's a good time. And we can also do it by visualizing. That's another common one, to imagine in your mind's eye that it's happening, whatever it is that you desire. That shifts the attention as well. That allows us to be a better match for what we want. There are other ways as well to engage it.
That's a very nice way of putting it.
Yeah, there are a wide variety of manifesting processes that are designed to harness our attention in a way that serves us and what we're creating. But it doesn't matter. It's not like there's one secret way that works better than everything else. I've got an ebook on pray rain journaling, which I'd learned was you write a page a day about what you want as if it's already happened. And by the time you get to the end of your book, you will have it, or it'll be so close you can reach out and touch it. oh my gosh, I had amazing results with that. But that isn't the best way. There isn't one single best way. It's whatever way we're willing to do. That's the best one, whichever one we actually use, whether it's writing a gratitude list every night or playing the game of wouldn't it be nice if with a friend and taking turns finishing the phrase. There's so many different ways to consciously turn our attention towards what we want. And that's where the power is. A lot of teachers in this world would say it doesn't even have to be that specific. All we have to do is make a commitment to do whatever feels better, or focus to think about whatever feels better. If we just pay attention to how we're feeling and we make the commitment to choosing to feel better in whatever is required for us to do that, that's all it takes in order to create better things in our life. Yeah. I'm a firm believer that it doesn't have to be complicated. Just deciding what feels better, whether it's I'm deciding, am I going to go out for dinner or am I going to stay home? Am I going to say yes to this invitation or am I going to decline it? If we just pay attention to what feels better and choose that consistently, that will transform a life in very short order, because it's amazing how often we don't do that.
And when you want to manifest, what do you do? What's your kind of go-to method? Is it the journal stuff where you write it down as if it's already happened?
It depends on my belief level in it. If this is a big stretch of a belief, then yeah, I write it down, because putting it in writing, it's guaranteed to happen. Not necessarily tomorrow, but it is happening. If I put it in writing, that's like my big guns. I'll pull out a new journal.
But surely if you write, I'm going to own 100 billion pounds, that's not going to happen.
Well, I have never written that, because that hasn't actually been a true desire of mine. But I have definitely written about money intentions, and they come true again and again and again. And the ones I'm working on now, oh my gosh, get this, Tony. I write it on my shower door. Not every morning, but a lot of mornings. I write down, I have a couple of metrics for my business, for my bank account, and I write them down and I speak them out loud. I've had to change it already because it happened so well. I had to give myself new numbers. So yeah, writing it in the steam on the shower door, because I'd heard water is an amplifier of the energy. I don't know if it's true, but it's a convenient way to engage it, because, you shower regularly. So that's one way to make it a habit.
If it always comes true, why don't you just stick a few more noughts on the end?
Well, it's the belief thing. What I learned from one of my favorite teachers, Abraham Hicks, is that if you're reaching for something that activates doubt, then you have just shot yourself in the foot, because if you doubt it, then you're focused on what you don't believe, and you're stymied. It's like a log jam, because if you haven't learned to expect it, and there is a way to grow into big dreams, a way to learn to make them feel normal and reachable. That's a process, though, and that's what I think effective creators are doing, because whatever we manifest now, there's going to be something we want after that's here. So it's a continual expansion. But that process of choosing something that feels like a stretch, but not so big a stretch that you just can't even believe in it, that's where the sweet spot is. So that's the one that I work, because I found it to be really effective. And a lot of the work that I do with clients is to teach them how to believe in what they want, because many people, even when they're shooting for something that seems relatively small, they've had such discouraging results in just the conventional approach to life that they've trained themselves into believing that they never get what they want. So we just got to restructure that belief in general and start small and then grow into the bigger things. But honest and true, Tony, I also know money is not all it's cracked up to be. The reason we want anything is because of how we think it's going to make us feel when we get it.
Yeah.
But the feeling is what we really want, whether it's freedom, whether it's security, whether it's to support others in the ways that we want to see them supported. Whatever the true desire is, that's the one worth focusing on. But I do like to manifest money too.
Yeah, I kind of do like money as well. Just interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that it is brought to you by Dr. Stephen Simpson and I's course, iwanttounplug.com. If you'd like to access deeper states of focus, productivity and creativity, then you head to iwanttounplug.com, that's iwanttounplug.com, and start to use the skills of neuro-linguistic programming to unplug effectively and feel that focus, productivity and creativity. So if you fancy learning a little bit more about NLP, taking the course, using some relaxation challenges and meditations in there as well, then you can head to iwanttounplug.com, and remember, use the code Zestology for 30% off. That is it. Back to the show. Money gives you freedom, doesn't it? I mean, I like to have these values that money, I'm not that bothered by money. But what I do like is the freedom to think I can do this, that, and the other because I can afford it.
Well, that's your interpretation of having money. Not everyone has that. Some people get money and they feel trapped. They feel burdened by it. It becomes a problem in their life. Money doesn't automatically give you freedom. We might have a belief that when I have money, then I will be free. I certainly have. And when I wanted to get divorced and I felt like, I can't afford to get divorced. It was many years ago before I'd found conscious creation. But it's a myth. Money can't make us feel anything. We're the ones who choose how we feel. And when we put it on money, that's disempowering for us, and it makes it harder to actually manifest it because now it's got an attachment or a charge on it that actually repels it. So it's, I think, very helpful for us to realize that we're in charge of how we feel, and I can feel free with or without money. And I know plenty of people who have had money and not felt free. It's amazing to me how many,
that's cool. Yeah, that's a good point.
A lot of people really, though, they really truly believe that they cannot be free without the money because otherwise they would never go to this job that they hate or whatever they're doing for money that they wouldn't otherwise do. A lot of people do believe that, but it is an illusion. That's total myth.
Jeannette, you have just proved me wrong. Well done. And
That's not my intention.
No, you're actually right. You've reframed that really nicely, and I guess it is more about a mindset. All that said, I would still rather have money than not. But I think you've really got a good point there.
Yeah, when we find our way to freedom, when we find our way to happiness, guess what? Money often shows up for that party because it does facilitate a lot of the things that also make us feel free and happy. But the key is to own that, to be in charge of how we feel, to find a way to choose freedom and happiness first. Because once we're there, then everything else first of all, we got what we really wanted, which was to feel better. But then everything else that matches that, it happens really enjoyably and naturally and swiftly. It's so cool how it works. But so many people are waiting for the job or the partner or the money in order to feel what they want to feel. So it's kind of it's a radical thing to be willing to feel good before there's any quote unquote reason to.
Well, I always just feel good chatting to you, Jeannette, to be quite honest. You've got a good energy about you, a zesty energy. Now, if I was to say, are there any secrets in the law of attraction? Are there, say, 3 secrets that people don't necessarily know about the law of attraction or conscious creation or manifesting dreams into reality? Is there anything that springs to mind that people don't necessarily know, but when they do find it out, it really helps? Yeah,
I'll say one of that we just talked about one of them, which is that the things that we wanted to manifest, because when I first approached conscious creation, I thought, oh my gosh, I've learned the key, how to create whatever I want. I can have a better job. I can have a better relationship. I can have the healthy body that I want. But what I learned was that this works way better when you just let yourself feel good first. That's like the direct way. I was focused on, with healthy body is what you're after. Weight loss was what I wanted. I'm a big fat liar when I say healthy body. I wanted to lose weight. This was back before I knew better. Okay. Because once I manifested less weight, I just wanted to lose even more. And I was like, whoa, this is where anorexia comes from. I had actually worked in an office with 3, it was a small office, 2 anorexics, 1 bulimic in there. And they kept telling me, Jeannette, you were one of us. And I did not think so. I thought they were crazy. And then one day when I was manifesting weight loss and I got to my target, and I was doing it just by I wanted to be a size 6 girl. I was just acting like a size 6 girl. I do not recommend anyone do this because the reason I'm telling the story is because I'm talking about my misguided attempts to use law of attraction to create what I wanted. Once I got to size 6, I was like, okay, just 5 more pounds and then I'll be good. Look, I'm practically 5'10". I should not be. The size 6 is it's scary thin. Yeah. It's scary, scary thin. And my point being that what I realized eventually was that I didn't want to be a size 6. What I really wanted was to feel good about myself and feel good about my body. I wanted to feel good in my body. And when I gave myself that gift, when I chose to feel good about my body, then she gravitates towards her best form of health. She tells me what she wants. It's a beautiful thing the way it works. My body. Oh, right. My body. She knows better than I do. She knows what size she should be. She knows when we should exercise and when we should rest.
And what was the secret? Choosing to feel good.
choosing to feel good about my body, just practicing feeling good about it. And there are I discovered two ways to go about it. One was to pretend that I already did enjoy it before I did, but the best way was to be in this body the way she was, as is, and say yes to it, embrace it instead of criticize it and resist it and think she needed to be different before I felt good about this body. Okay, so I'm getting a little sidetracked, but my point being that the direct method works best. Just find a way to feel better now. That's what we wanted all along. The rest of the stuff falls in line when we get to that point. That's one secret. But the other one is that it doesn't help when we make this serious work. Like a lot of things that we engage in life, we're used to making it hard. We're used to having a struggle around it. But conscious creation works better when we approach it lightly with a joyful heart. Don't take it too seriously. Have a good time with it. That serves way, way, way better than, okay, I'm going to nail this once and for all. I'm going to have a diligent practice. And we structure these manifesting processes that take the fun out of it and make it a job. That often doesn't really serve either.
I think in public life and in every area of life, when people are very serious, we tend to be more suspicious. And when they've kind of got a light touch, it's almost like they don't care quite so much. That's when we think, all right, now I want to buy the dishwasher or whatever it is. Like, it's like that lightness of touch and that not caring too much, not giving too much of a monkeys about it actually pays huge dividends. And it probably works on ourselves as well.
It's so true. I have at my membership site, we have complimentary coaches who offer services to members. And one of them had sent over a write-up of her services that was written by a PR agent, not by herself. And in it, it included a sentence like, do not miss out on this magical transformation opportunity. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds like you're trying to sell people. I just deleted that sentence and it completely changed the whole energy of her offering. Because you're right, when we try too hard, it's just got an energy in it that is not appealing. And that's true for our conscious creation practice as well. I mean, because this is what I do for a living, I tend to attract people who are taking it very seriously, who are making it important in their life. And just to remember this, it isn't that important. Relax about it. That's going to serve you really well. That's actually why so many people are kind of frustrated about when they pay attention to how their thoughts manifest in their world. They get a little frustrated because they'll notice that the things they hardly think about at all, it's a one fleeting thought. And then the next thing you know, the next hour, it's showing up in their reality. They're like, oh, those things I don't care about happen so effortlessly, but the things I really, really, really want take forever. It's because of that lightness of touch, that lack of seriousness.
That's a good
so
secret.
I think and it's kind of frustrating for someone to tell you, well, just lighten up about it when you've been taking it seriously. That doesn't always land really well. So it's kind of an art to get to that light heart with it, but I think it is worth recognizing that it serves us very well. The third secret that comes to mind is that I hear this all the time. You probably have too, Tony, that it's a little frustrating to hear someone say again, but the joy really is in the process. It isn't all about getting what we want. It isn't about getting to that where we manifested the money and ta-da, now I can say I did it and now I can live happily ever after, because on the heels of that, we're just going to have another desire. It's what life does. It brings us more things to want. There isn't ever going to come a time. And well, actually, if there comes a time when we no longer want anything else, that's when we're ready to die. So it's cool to actually have new desires. That's what keeps us going. That's why they tell retired people to find new hobbies and new things to engage in, because they will slowly dwindle over time if they don't have something they're excited about. But because that unending process of wanting new things, it just goes on and on and on. It's important to make peace with that there's always going to be something that we want, and that's okay. We don't have to suspend our enjoyment or our feel good in life until we get everything that we thought we wanted, because it's an unending process. So you better find a way to enjoy that process or you'll never know satisfaction.
And that is consciousness, right? You talk about conscious creation. Well, that is consciousness.
I would agree. Yeah. Well said.
Well said you, Jeannette. Excellent secrets. Now, something I've asked you before, but I'm going to ask you again. What is one book that you'd recommend and one tip for living with more energy, vitality and motivation? And bear in mind that the book can be fiction, non-fiction, anything that grabs you.
Oh, I love this question, Tony. I gotta say it just because it's on my mind. Pollyanna changed my life. It's the children's book, the story of the girl, Pollyanna. the reason why we use that word usually negatively, derogatorily towards someone who we think has got rose-colored glasses and isn't facing reality.
Okay.
But my dad insisted that I read this book years and years and years ago. I was building my business. He could see me taking it very seriously. I was taking it very seriously. He kept telling me that I needed to read this book. And I said, yeah, Dad, I will. I never did. He eventually gave it to me for my birthday, which then I felt obligated to read it. And I read it, and it did change my life. I feel silly because I already understood the power of thought. I was building a business as a law of attraction coach, but I read that book, and it was a game changer for me. And I don't think it would be that for everyone who picks it up, but it was the book that came to mind when you asked me which one. But I'm also a big fan of Johann's Lost Connections.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to say that it's not that I work with a lot of depressed people, but I think a lot of people have struggled in how to manage some challenging feelings. And this book offers a lot of insight about what's really effective and what isn't.
He's a great writer. And you know, did you know his own journey? He was one of the top writers in the UK. He probably mentions it in the book. And then he basically had to step down and leave the country because of this huge plagiarism row. It turned out that he'd been plagiarizing a lot of the articles that he was writing, and he came clean and he said, you know, he's kind of reinvented himself now and he's writing a different style. And he was always one of my favorite writers. He's a brilliant writer. And so it was such a surprise to everyone. I don't think it was like massive plagiarism, but it was like quotes kind of that hadn't quite been said by people but had been attributed and that kind of thing. I'm probably going to have to check that that's exactly what happened. But yeah, I mean, a really interesting journey from someone who was pretty much the journalist of the year, and did not know. Yeah, he's not. Wow. He's young as well, you know. Yeah, he admitted being the author of pejorative edits under an anonymous pseudonym of his critics' Wikipedia pages. Oh, God. And so, yeah, really interesting history. And he's obviously had this massive transformative crisis very early in his life. So, so I'd say he has a lot to say. Well, the book did a lot for me. Yeah, that's brilliant. And I mean, I just read it recently, so that's why I can't stop quoting from it. But I'm also a big fan of Ask and It Is Given by Abraham Hicks. There was one particular, for anyone who's interested in conscious creation, that's the source, that's the go-to book. The one that turned me on to it was Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting by Lynn Grabhorn. But she was really, everything she'd learned, she'd taken from Abraham Hicks. She writes in a very entertaining style. But I don't think there's a better source for embracing our true power to have what we want than Abraham. Fantastic. Yeah, I'll definitely look that one up, as well as the Johann one, which I'm really interested in reading now. Now, what about one tip then, Jeannette? You've given us so many already, and I always love speaking to you. I always feel inspired. But what would be the one tip that you think helps people live with more energy, vitality, and motivation? Oh, this is an easy answer. And a lot of people are already doing it, but I think most of us always have room for improvement on it. And that is to listen to our inner guidance more often, because so often we're trained about what we're supposed to do, what's expected from others, what the quote unquote right thing to do is, instead of listening to that voice within that says, go here. In fact, Martha Beck has very strong messages along these lines to help people listen to that inner voice. Abraham's work is all about, they call it your inner being, but it's just that part of you that knows what's best for you. And to be willing to listen for that, because a lot of us don't even hear it anymore. We got so used to tuning it out because we're doing what everyone else told us to do that we don't even know, we don't even hear it. But once we start listening for it, we will hear it better. And then the challenge becomes to have the courage to honor it when it's pointing towards something that is not socially acceptable or not approved by our spouse or our boss or whoever, to be able to honor that guidance within. That's always pointing us towards what we want. And when we recognize that and start listening for it and saying yes to it, then it's a game changer in life. It's a quick shortcut to dreams come true. Now, where can people find out more about you, everything you do? Obviously, you've got a brilliant podcast, which I've been loving. And I think we're going to record a podcast for your podcast at some point as well, aren't we? Thank you for that. Yes. My blog is goodvibeblog.com. The podcast is loarecon.com, but I am in process of moving that podcast over to the blog so you can find it all in one place. But yes, best place to find me, goodvibeblog.com.
Thanks for inviting me to play again, Tony. You are such a treat.
Oh, yeah. Well, likewise. Look, I always love talking to you. And the law of attraction resonates very deeply with people. They love it. So,
I think it's time. I think people are waking up. I think there's been a rising of consciousness for quite a while that has led us to be able to embrace this more than ever before.
Thanks to Jeannette Maw. If you enjoyed that podcast, she's been on Zestology about 3 times before, and if you just go back through the Zestology archives, if you go to tonywrighton.com/Zestology and look for Jeannette Maw's old interviews, then you can find them there, or just Google Zestology Jeannette Maw, you'll find them that way as well. And there's some fun other Law of Attraction podcasts that we've done. Whilst you're at tonywrighton.com, you might also want to check out my new hacks page. All the new rules for living with energy, vitality and motivation. Go to tonywrighton.com/hacks and you'll find water filter recommendations, supplement recommendations, even the headband that helps you to meditate more deeply. As for me, I'm still walking around central London, but it's getting late now, a little bit chilly. I would almost say autumnal, but I don't want to invite that in because it's still summer just about. So that's it from me for this podcast. As always, I'll be back next week, every Monday, when you wake up. Podcast waiting for you. And until then, have a zesty week.